All right, we are back. Peanut Gallery, take it away.
All right. So, speaking of Andrade, he wrestled for many years in Mexico before going to the WWE, and he was known as La Sombra. La Sombra has a couple of different meanings in Mexico. The first and most obvious one is the shadow. So, it's very likely that he adopted that name because he comes from a lineage where his father was called Brillante, so brilliant or light. And so he literally went the opposite direction. The reasoning for that is because of his training and his tutelage under originally someone who was named El Diamante.
Right.
So he was a heel for the majority of his career in Mexico, or the bad guy. But he also has but the La Sombra has a different meaning, and that is called a silhouette. So as opposed to maybe a brilliant, clear, shining, he is a shadow silhouette. You know, he has that mysterious character about him. And as far as culturally goes, the shadows, it has pretty much the same meaning here that it does there. Shadow evoking the sense of evil or darkness, or not knowing what's going to be around the corner. And the vast majority of La Sombra's career revolved around the fact that he was called La Sombra. He was kind of that mysterious, like you never know what's around the corner kind of person. Because he teamed up with people, and then the next week he was against them in rivalries. He took place actually when he was with CMLL. He had a very famous reign with Volador Jr. Mm-hmm. And then after they lost the titles, they became major rivals, and they actually competed in many tournaments where they were going against each other. So as far as that goes, I mean, I couldn't find a lot on kind of like the cultural significance of La Sombra. Like I said, I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that he has a huge family lineage. Like he has cousins, uncles, father, grandfather. They were all luchadors, and they even ran a wrestling school, which is where he trained. Right. But he did not, although for a short time he did carry the name Brillante Jr., but that's not what he's known for. And I think part of that has to do with, again, he was trained under the tutelage of someone who himself had this sort of demonic character. And again, demons, the devil, in Mexico in particular, very, very sort of like, not cartoonish, but maybe very vivid, very vibrant. Right. And so it's almost like La Sombra was an extension of that, representing the silhouette, the shadow, the unknown, I guess, that is evoked from that. And his personality really shone through with that sort of like that style of you never know what he's going to do. Right. And he had a lot of different alliances and a lot of different rivals over the years. That's not where I'm going to go in particular with this, but I think what resonates with me the most is just how influential that sort of character was within Mexican wrestling, because again, this was in CMLL, which isn't really known for their vivid characters, but I think after AAA came into being, they had to adopt more of those characters. So when I look at it, I kind of see that balance between those outlandish characters that AAA has come to be known for, that CMLL is attempting to in some ways emulate, but also keeping in line with some of those traditions. Now, the other important thing to note is that, yes, his father and his grandfather were wrestlers known as Brillante. And he should have, in a theoretical sense, should have adopted El Brillante as that lineage, because the lineage of those masks, those characters are very important in Mexican tradition. Mm-hmm. And he bucked the trend in many ways. And I think, and he's not the first one to buck the trend, but you have to look at the importance of that tradition and how it was. He didn't just buck the trend, he literally went the opposite direction. And I think it just goes to show that when it comes to that competition that you got in the 90s, when it comes to the development of characters as opposed to just the son of this, you need to take a look at kind of striking that balance. And I think CMLL is doing an okay job with it, but I don't think they have it perfected.
No.
Triple A just bucked the trend completely. They threw it out the window. But La Sombra really kind of played around with that, I think, a lot. He played with that tradition versus, bucking that tradition.
Right. One of the first people to do this was Eddie Guerrero, actually.
Yes.
He was one of the first luchadors to voluntarily take off his mask and wrestle as his actual name. With like Gory Guerrero never had a mask, but Eddie started to train and do everything under the mask, and he gained his reputation. So changing his style, and La Sombra very, very much did the same exact thing. So, and when he went to WWE, he got rid of the La Sombra character and went to Andrade Cien Almas, which once again, it's a really risky move when you start making a name. This is especially in Mexico. When you start changing around your gimmick too much, where a mask is incorporated or taken out, it can be the death of a career, which is why when a wrestler retires, they usually lose a mask versus mask match.
Right. And he actually took part in one of the first mask versus mask matches in CMLL.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Or maybe it wasn't.
There's
CMLL.
no way.
It wasn't CMLL. It was. I think it was.
Was it Triple A?
No, it wasn't Triple A. It was one of the wrestling promotions that he started out at that was attached to the school.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
I'm like, there's no way in hell that La Sombra was one of the first mask versus mask matches in CMLL history. No way.
No, that was when he was Brillante Jr., and then I think he lost that match and then became La Sombra. So
I see. So
again, I think it's interesting to note that. So he was the Brillante.
Right.
He took off his mask and then he changed characters
to La Sombra turning heel.
Yes.
Right. Ooh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So again, I think that Andrade or La Sombra used a lot of those trends, and I think it really reflects on his character name, and it really reflects on the culture of Mexico at the time.
Right.
That he, in losing that match, for example, he changed his character and became the opposite
of the brightness. He became the shadow.
And think about this too. Superheroes, when they lose a piece of themselves, they become the anti.
Right.
And I think that's most famous in Spider-Man.
Right.
When Spider-Man had
or Superman, because they always want to do Superman as being a bad person.
Right.
And one of the things that Superman has is his like moral standpoint, and when that's taken away, he becomes evil Superman.
Right.
With Spider-Man, getting with Venom, he becomes a lot more arrogant.
Right.
Where arrogance is added with La Sombra, instead of retiring or doing that, he totally changes character from the brightness to the shadow.
Shadow. Okay, yeah.
Which once again, that's a great idea, and once again, it's a big risk for these luchadors where lineage and family lineage is so dynamically important.
Yeah.
And when you go against that tradition, it's almost like shoot fights and somebody winning when they're not supposed to.
Right.
Especially back in the day.
Right.
So
anyways, that's kind of what I had.
Okay.
And let me know what your thoughts are on it. I tried not to go too much into his career, so I hope that it kind of helped to get some of that cultural significance behind La Sombra, and I think a variety of different facets.
Right.
If you don't agree with me, let me know. But I think it's very interesting. So
right.
when we come back, wrestling lessons,
Yeah.
Tiger Height.
Hell yeah.